Hello, and welcome to day 3 of Biohacking Gifts. I am doing a big holiday campaign where every single day I am giving away a bunch of health and wellness gifts. So we're talking supplements, we're talking tech, a bunch of different things, and a bunch of products that actually I recommend and use myself as a biohacker. So day 3 is all about timeline nutrition. It's all about cellular nutrition. So this giveaway is now live on my Instagram account at biohackingbrittany, and it is up for 7 days. So you can see here, if you're watching on YouTube, these are the little sachets. This is the ginger flavored from Timeline Nutrition. And we get into the science of this during this interview. We get into the powerful ingredient Mitopure, but I love using these. I love using the ginger in like smoothies or water. And they also have a berry flavor that I add to my yogurt in the morning. Basically, the ingredients in this really help the mitochondria function in the cell, which means that you are going to feel more energized and just like healthier in general. So we get all into that in the interview today. Enjoy it. And always, if you want to try this yourself and you enter the giveaway, maybe you don't win, or you want to buy this for a loved one for the holidays this year, you can do so through the links in the show notes and in the description below. And also you can use my discount code so that you don't have to pay full price and you can try it out like that. So come back tomorrow for day 4 as I explore other health and wellness brands. Hello, and welcome to another day of 12 days of biohacking gifts. I am here with Ian Davison from Timeline Nutrition, and we are going to talk all about mitochondrial health versus autophagy, which I hadn't even heard of until looking further into this company. So welcome to the show.
Great to be here with you, Brittany.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. What is the heart of this product? What makes it different compared to other things on the market?
Yeah, so Timeline Nutrition is a science-first nutrient company. And we say that because the science came first for us. And we're a 15-year-old company, but we did 13 years of science to really establish something new and different in the world of nutrition before bringing it to market. And so the heart of our products is a postbiotic, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term yet, but it's growing. And these are the really interesting nutrients or compounds our bodies make when we eat the right foods. And at the heart of our product, Mitopure, is a postbiotic.
Nice. Okay. And so Mitopure, how exactly does that work in the body?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're all fighting against is aging, right? And time. And while there's no way to stop time, what we can do is change the way that we experience it. One of the major hallmarks of aging is called mitochondrial dysfunction. And basically what that means is our ability to produce energy from the air we breathe and the food we eat degrades over time. And we experience that as aging. So in that theory, if you can change the way that your mitochondria work, upgrade them, you actually begin to think differently about how you'll experience time. And ultimately, that's what our product does. It goes in and triggers your body's natural process to upgrade the energy generators in your cells.
And so energy generators, you're talking about mitochondria, obviously.
There you go. Powerhouse of the cell, right? We all learned that in biology class.
Yeah, the one thing that everybody remembers. Yeah. So when we're talking about mitochondria, before we kind of understand how this product really supports it, how would somebody know if their mitochondria is not functioning as well as it should compared to like their age and their lifestyle?
Yeah. So it's a really great question, right? So I think the first thing that we understand is that for all of us over time, this is a process, right? That our mitochondrial function will decline. And it declines for so many different reasons. Part of it is the process of creating the energy our body uses actually damages the mitochondria over time. And the good news is your body actually has a natural process to quality control those mitochondria and actually fix them. It's called mitophagy. Mm-hmm. And what mitophagy does is go in and takes a look at the quality of your mitochondria. And for those that are dysfunctional or not performing well, it targets them to be destroyed and then recycled into fresh new ones. It's like putting new light bulbs in. So ultimately, that's the body's process. The challenge is that over time, we just build up these damaged mitochondria, and this process can't keep up. there are several ways in which you can trigger mitophagy. And they all make sense when you think about it evolutionarily. But one of the questions is, how do we trigger more mitophagy? And that's where things like Mitopure come in, because what we can do is on a daily basis, take a product that triggers that key pathway and make sure that you're really recycling those damaged mitochondria over time.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting that mitophagy and autophagy are happening at the same time, probably within the same cells then. So then does your product also support autophagy through this same process, or like, how does that work?
Yeah, great question. So we are really targeting mitophagy, which in some ways is similar to autophagy. So autophagy is basically the cellular renewal across your entire body, right? Mitophagy is specifically targeting those energy producers. And so what our product does is actually goes in, triggers that process of cellular renewal, mitophagy specifically, and then creates this additional energy resource that your body can then deploy. And that's where the science starts to get really interesting as we look at kind of where the benefits go from there.
Right. So if you take one of these sachets per day, what type of like benefits, or like what would you actually see? Like obviously there's longevity benefits, but it's really difficult with longevity supplements because sometimes you don't really see the benefits on the actual day. You know what I mean? And a lot of people really want to see a difference in their skin or feel more energy. So like what can you expect to feel or see daily when taking this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, our North Star is the clinical trials, the gold standard of establishing kind of where this is going to go and the benefits that you're going to receive. And so we are doing those trials currently, and we have several of them established. So the first, the most important thing is the product making a difference in your body? And so our first studies published in Nature Metabolism show that we can actually upregulate the genomic markers for mitochondrial well-being and function. So that's the first thing. And recently, what we've been able to show, not only are you getting that elevated energy levels, but then downstream in actually the final cells that are doing the work, and in this case, skeletal muscle cells, we're able to show that you can increase strength and endurance with no change in your activity levels. So what that means is the mitochondria within the muscle cells, which are needing a ton of energy, right? They move us through the environment every single day. Those cells are upregulated. And just by creating more energy, what we call bioenergetics, they're able to do more work, either in lifting more weight or continuing to work for longer periods, which is super exciting.
Yeah, that's interesting. So obviously one of your target markets is athletes, I guess, and like people who really value exercise, because if you can be more, like have more stamina and do better in the gym or whatever in the sports that you're playing, like that's a huge advantage to other people.
Yeah. So it's great that you point that out. So it's really interesting who's most interested in that benefit, because it's much wider than you think. So while of course athletes are looking at this and very much interested in it because of that peak performance level, there are actually a wide variety of people who are interested in this. If you think about all of us, at some level, muscle function is a really important part of our process of aging. In fact, we know from a lot of clinical work that your muscle declines with each decade of your life. And so the question is, how much? So for those of us who are doing exercise and maintaining that muscle mass, we see that they age better. And in fact, we find them out in their 80s and 90s, active, vibrant lifestyles. For those who are doing less, though, obviously the challenge is more. And so that's where this product potentially comes in really interesting for somebody who's in their 70s and 80s and looking at those last decades of their life and thinking, I want vibrant life, right? I want to be able to climb that staircase, open that jar, get out of the chair. For them, increased muscle strength and endurance is super meaningful as well. So it's a full spectrum of people who are really interested in our products.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, and like, I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but I'm very much in the women's health world. And I'm very interested in mitochondria because the ovaries have the most mitochondria in them per cell in any organ in the body for male and female. So if you're taking something like this that directly targets mitochondria and would theoretically directly support ovarian health, whether that's like ovarian cancer or fertility or menstrual cycles or pregnancy, etc. Is there any data about that? Or like, do you have any recommendations or thoughts on that in general?
So Brittany, such a great question. So I think where we start is, mitochondria are powering cells throughout your body, right? Your brain, your heart, as you mentioned, ovaries, elsewhere. They're at the core of basically keeping all of those cells functioning well. The science we published, whether it's the studies we did in JAMA or Cell Reports this year, those are focusing mostly on muscle health at this point, largely because we can do the in-depth studies there. But the exciting news here is the story is not done. And to your point is you can think about where are mitochondria most densely populated and how do those things get impacted by an elevated cellular level? That's where the research is focusing now. So I think what we'll see over the next several years is much more research coming out to answer these questions. But at this point, I'm not able to get into it and tell you exactly what we may or may not know until those research studies are published.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I just ask because I'm having these conversations with people on social media where they're trying to take different supplements like CoQ10 or anything like that to support mitochondria, to support fertility. So it makes sense that people are studying this now, and hopefully there's data that comes out about this, because I'm sure somewhat fertility for both men and women is a big concern nowadays. So,
absolutely. Right. And I think, as we step back and just think about how foundational mitochondrial health is and how much we're all going to start to realize that over time.
Yeah.
Without the energy that they produce, we just can't survive. Right. And so I don't think most people are there yet, but that's the fundamental science, right? And so thinking about your mitochondrial health and imagining how it connects to all of these other ailments that we have, I think that's where we start to see really interesting new opportunities going forward. So I think when we get people waking up every morning thinking, what am I doing today for my mitochondrial health? Knowing that exercise triggers mitophagy too, right? The more that you exercise, the more that you're stimulating that process of renewal. Calorie restriction also triggers mitophagy. When you think about it from a biological perspective, when you exercise, you elevate your requirements for energy. So it makes a ton of sense that your body would say, I need to create more energy. I better replace all the old mitochondria. And the opposite is somewhat true when you think about fasting or caloric restriction. The body's thinking, well, I don't have as much energy as I need to survive. I better get more efficient at turning it into the energy I need for my cells to survive. So that pathway is the pathway that we're working on with Urolithin A, what we call Mitopure. And it's just so core to all the function of what's going on in your body that I think it's a really exciting place to start as we think about really building a solid foundation for health.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because the recommendations for triggering autophagy are almost identical to what you said, right? Like fasting, enough exercise daily, sleep is an adequate one as well, stress management, like these things that are kind of like self-care and kind of people overlook, but actually have a massive impact on your cellular health and your mitochondrial health. And like you said, that is what is going to take you well into old age, but still being healthy and increasing your health span, not your lifespan, as people say now, right?
Totally. No, absolutely. And I think as we think about this, right, we want to make sure that we're doing the right things and in the right levels. So one of the studies that we did around Mitopure is really looking at what is the therapeutic level to be taking every day, because this is a daily process, right? Imagine exercise. If you exercise once, it's amazing. If you exercise for the rest of your life, though, you're going to change your life. And that's the same thing we're talking about here when it comes to something like Mitopure, which is this is a daily part of your ritual, right? This is something that when you do it daily and consistently, you'll get results. And that's where the clinical trials really show us. So what happens is after daily use for up to 8 weeks, you start to see some of those core benefits. So it's not a magic pill, right? This isn't something that you're going to take once and forget about and everything's going to be fine. What this is a choice and a pathway to potentially that solid foundation of health. And all of our studies show somewhere out in that 2 to 4 month range, you're going to really start to see those benefits accrue.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's like that with most supplements, with most biohacks that you're doing. You can't just do it once and be like, okay, I'm good now. It's a lifestyle, which is so annoying to say and hear, but it's true. So I'm curious, we talked about kind of how to support the mitochondria, but what are things that are actually damaging towards it? Like alcohol, processed food?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. So, I mean, the very process of creating the energy itself within the mitochondria over time does damage them. So that, that is the key source. And then there's all the extrinsic factors, right? The toxins and environment, things that we're putting in our body that challenge them as well. This is a process, right? Sometimes you think about it like maybe you can see when you burn your skin, right? You can see the redness, you can see the skin start to fade away, right? And you see the new skin being replaced. That process of renewal is constantly happening inside your body. I recently was talking with one of our researchers, and he was telling me that, our mitochondria may only live several months and that they're constantly being turned over. It depends on which cells you're talking about. But you have to think about this continual renewal happening, right? We're not the same cells we are 5 years ago. We're fresh and we're new. And yet we think of ourselves as the same person. And so really thinking about that cellular truth, that individual cells are going through this process of renewal constantly over and over. And it's only through that process that we continue to be healthy. And supporting that renewal is really where we're spending most of our time and energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it just drives home the fact that we should try and make the healthiest decisions every day. And obviously, take that with a grain of salt and balance and live your life and all of those good things too. But you really do have to make a commitment to yourself and a commitment to your health at the end of the day.
You're 100% right. And, frankly, I'm the first to admit I like to exercise, but I can't do it every day. Yeah. I wish my diet was on point every day.
Yeah.
It's just not. But, what I can think about are where can I add elements to my diet? Where can I add elements to my lifestyle that make it more resilient? So on those days when I'm traveling and I can't get to the gym or I can't eat right, what can I do? And that's for me the next step, right? Is I want to build extra structures around the core of my well-being that allow me to make sure that even on those days when I'm not perfect, I'm not falling back. And so things like when we think about looking at our diet, it's a really exciting area because I think we're going to start to see that the diet has always been thought of in some ways as what are the inputs? Am I eating the right foods? But what I think we're starting to see is that it's a combination of, are you eating the right foods? And do you have the right microbiome to process those foods into healthy, helpful nutrients? And in fact, the story of our product actually is related to that, in that the origins of the product come from deep dive into the science behind pomegranates. And from that, we actually determined that this postbiotic is actually a derivative of eating pomegranates and things like that. But when it passes through your microbiome, we found that most people can't convert enough urolithin A to get a healthy benefit. And that's where we really began to look into the science of how this works. Right.
And so why do you think most people can't get enough of it? What is that? Is that some sort of trait that's been passed down? Or is it just poor digestion on our behalf?
It's a super complicated question and one that I think we'll be spending years thinking about. I wish it was one strand of microflora turns into converting the right precursors into the best postbiotic. It's much, much more complicated than that. It's multiple strands working in conjunction with each other to convert the really great stuff in the food we eat into the best of the postbiotics. And so until we understand that, I think what we need to start thinking about is how do we identify those key benefits, things like Mitopure, and really focus on, can we provide those elements to everybody? And that's really our mission. I mean, if you step back and think about it, say for instance, your cell phone, right? It needs to be charged. Most of us are not in the power plant business. Most of us are in the business of plugging our phone into a wall and getting that benefit. And in some ways, that's the same thing that we're doing with our products, right? We want you to have the benefit. We will work on the science. We will handle the complexity, and we will get you the benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'd be curious to see, I'm just curious in general of if there's different populations around the world that actually convert better. And if they do, why? Right. And then it kind of goes into that whole discussion of blue zones and why are some people healthier and some people aren't? And it's just really interesting when we look at stuff like that. And then we look at modern day lifestyle and nutrition, and are the rates of converting this actually decreasing with people now? Is it going to get worse than it currently is?
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about that, because we did do a study on exactly that question around urolithin A. So we took 100 people off the street in Chicago, and we basically tested their blood to see how many of them just walking around had urolithin A
Wow.
available to them. And the answer was 12% came in off the street with the right diet and microbiome on their own. Not all of them could convert at a therapeutic level, but they were at least making some. And so the suspicion was that, well, let's just give them the right diet. Let's give them the precursor, the really important parts of the pomegranate nuts and berries that would allow them to make it. And let's see. And the expectation, of course, was that this number is going to go through the roof. But after we gave the right precursors and tested them the next day, what we found was that only about 35 to 40% of them could convert Urolithin A, which left basically 2 out of 3 people without any ability to convert this in a meaningful way. And that was really the beginning moment where we said, okay, we have a mission here, right? There is an absence in the population, the ability to convert this product. People are going to need to have a nutrient if they want these longevity benefits. Let's go out and produce that for them. And so, yeah, it's really exciting to think about, like, why or how can we move that number from 1 in 3 converting to 2 in 3, or maybe 3 in 3 one day? And the science is certainly, on the track of that, but it's just not there today.
Yeah, of course. Of course. It's like very new, right? But it's cool that you are doing studies about it.
It's super exciting, right? To imagine that, one day we could say it is all about the inputs, right? That we all have the best converter. We all have the best microbiome that can really take the nutrients from the product, from the foods we eat, and really make the things our body needs to thrive. I think that's the future, and we're excited about it. And yet we also know the complexity is such that it's probably not tomorrow. And so in the meantime, we want to make sure that we're thinking about how do we do things today while we're just keeping our eye on the North Star and thinking about the future.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, Ian. Thank you so much for coming on. And everyone, head over to Timeline Nutrition if you do want to try this yourself. I will put the links down below and everywhere for you to find it.
Brittany, so great to talk to you.